I'm going to try a couple of the intros and then we'll do your thing. Welcome to the / podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity.
That's good.
Yeah. And Taylor wrote that one, our marketing. ChatGPT wrote this one. Hold on, shut up, my stupid robot. So that's not. Oh. That would have been fantastic.
Awesome.
It's cleaning itself out right now. Stupid Roomba. Can you believe they went bankrupt?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're like
That's
struggling.
crazy.
All right. Let's get this thing to shut up. Emptying bin. Okay. Welcome to the / podcast, where we explore the future of IT one bold idea at a time. From emerging tech to modern leadership, we talk with thinkers, builders, and change makers shaping what's next. All right. I don't know if I like that one. We'll try the one that's in the document here.
I do like Taylor's better than that one.
I do, yeah. I don't know. All right, so we may take the first. Let me write this down. Take a note here. Oh, there it is, right in front of my face. I guess I could just. All right, let's just go with her alternative. All right, we're going to record the alternative one from the script here. Welcome to the / podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity. I'm your host, James Carman, and today we're diving into a topic that may spur some debate. Dedicated QA resources. Are they critical or antiquated? Joining me is Matt Choi, one of our amazing test automation engineers at Calibrity. Matt, will you maybe introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Matt. I'm from California originally. Grew up there, born and raised, but I do love the Midwest. So I'm out in West Lafayette, Indiana, where I volunteer as a mentor for college students at my church. Moved out here to start that. So go Boilermakers. I've been working as a test automation engineer for 6 years. With varying titles. I took a gap year after college to do some volunteer work. And actually, one of the interesting things, I guess, is I didn't know anything about quality assurance or test automation or this whole side of development until I graduated and started working. But I knew I would probably be pretty good at it because in college and everything, I was very good at breaking people's code. So I would have a project that it would never work well the first, second, or 10th time. It took a lot. And so it was a perfect marriage of things that I learned at school and my natural talent, I guess, at breaking things. So yeah, that's me.
Very cool. And you studied cognitive science at Berkeley. That's pretty cool. So what was your favorite part of studying cognitive science?
Oh yeah. So I graduated from Berkeley and it was just I think I chose cognitive science because it allowed me to study multiple things. So in cognitive science, you study philosophy, psychology, as well as you have to take, the AI classes, and it's about the study of the mind. And so trying to understand what the mind is from different angles, I think it was really interesting. And I thought it helped me to know that I was not going to do anything biology related because I took a neuroscience class. And I was like, no, that's not for me. But it was really interesting to see that and to see how, it is the idea of a neural network is not exactly one-to-one, but seeing the way that our brain works and then the way that we're trying to set up, the future of AI, machine learning, all of that, how it's kind of similar and how we're modeling it based off of something very natural. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so I did a computer science minor, that was mostly for the practical side, just so that I could get a job after college.
That makes sense. Not a lot of call for philosophers these days in the
Yeah,
market. You don't hear
unfortunately.
a lot of. They're not hanging out the job offers for philosophers these days much.
Yeah, and I feel like they only really make it big once they're dead. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Then the money starts pouring in.
yeah,
When you can't enjoy it. And it's usually hundreds of years later. Right.
yeah,
All right. So since you study cognitive science, we could probably sit here and talk about AI, cool stuff, and fun theoretical things for hours. However, we're here to talk about QA and the traditional QA model. So this does for we've encountered situations where folks might hear kind of our approach to things and they're like, wait a minute, they look at us a little funny and look at like we have two heads when we talk about how we approach quality and QA within our teams. We've had people that there's opposition to it. They'll say, well, how can that be? How can you do what you do? Why? No, that's terrible. We'll re-record that. I'll start over from the beginning. Okay. So first off, John, you can cut all of that. I'm going to pause for a second. First off, let's talk about how do most places like approach QA, when it comes to quality assurance. How do most shops do it? I mean, there's kind of a couple models, I think, but kind of tell us how that works typically.
yeah. I think typically, and I haven't seen this a lot, because I've been like really lucky to work at companies that have been a little bit more forward thinking. But what I have seen in my time is that, yeah, usually it'll be like there's the dev work and there's the QA work, right? And then we'll usually just develop first, and that'll all happen. And it's sort of like the quality people don't really see what's going on there until, okay, here's a product, here's some sort of, at best case scenarios, here's some business requirements, here's the scenarios we need to hit. And then so you guys handle that, sign off on that, say it's good, and then that's how it gets up to whoever is next in the bureaucratic chain, I guess. So that's what I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that's where you have the QA is kind of a completely separate team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different managers, different priorities, right? You can imagine how that causes troubles.
Yeah.
So that's like how we did it, forever and ever. That was the way we always did it. And then they started to kind of do, lean in the right direction where they would start to like matrix folks in. So they would still have maybe a central organization, and then they would assign a, QA person to a team. So you at least have somebody dedicated at least to the team, but that was dedicated, meaning they were the people doing it. Have you experienced those sort of setups?
Yeah, totally. I think that's pretty common actually. And it's I think that experience is, I think that's what I hear about a lot. That's a lot of what I've experienced is here's the dev team, you're the QA guy, you meet with the QA people outside of the team meetings, and you sort of, when you're in the team, then it's sort of still the nature is that it's still a little bit split though. It's that the devs do their thing, and then QA, you don't look like, I wouldn't look at it until the devs say, oh, it's done. And I think while that's better, for sure, better than like the other setup, there is still some issues with that for sure. Yeah. And I think like one thing, like just to sort of keep talking about that sort of setup, is that it creates kind of this kind of like it just really takes like one person to have one bad day, where it's like they say something snappy, and then it's sort of this dynamic of like dev thinks it's good enough, QA doesn't, like finds an issue, and it's not necessarily their fault that they're doing their job and finding the issue, but because of the nature of there's the QA side and the dev side, it creates that dynamic of like it's the devs versus the QAs, and then sort of like creates an odd tension in the team, I think is what I've seen before.
It's a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what we've experienced is a very much it hurts the team culture, right? You get it, like you're saying, it's kind of that us versus them. It's they're at odds with one another. Where you kind of want your team to be, if it's a team, they should all be going for the same objective, for the same goals, right? They should all be rowing in the same direction, so to speak. So yeah, I've absolutely seen that. Another thing is now, especially with the older model, where you kind of the team just finishes developing their stuff and they go throw it over the wall. Someone will eventually test it. I have no idea who. We'll just get reports back if it's wrong. That feedback delay is one of the things we've seen has been pretty bad. I think that still goes on to a lesser extent when you have like just the dedicated QA person on the team. That what we usually see, like if let's say you have 2-week sprints. I'm a developer, and also I'll fully admit to this. What developers will do is, okay, we got 2 weeks to do our stories. Well, we'll wait. We'll take the 8 days or 9 days to do my story. Okay, I'm done now. I'm ready for QA to do their thing. So you get, all the QA folks are just like under the gun at the very last minute on every sprint, and then so things keep carrying over, and it never hardly works out where, oh, we get one story done Monday, we can help test it, and then Tuesday we get another. It doesn't work. It's always like slammed at the very last minute at the end of the sprint or whatever, right? I think that's always, and again, that's that delayed feedback. Like, okay, I worked for almost 2 weeks and I don't hear anything about feedback from what I was doing until at the end of the thing, and then I have no time to fix it.
Yeah, I have a pretty funny story about that actually. Like it was some tiny feature like when I was first starting, and the company I was working at, they were like going through a transition where they brought in like trainers for like the agile mindset. So it was actually like by the end of my time there, it was like we were working like clockwork. It was like really smooth. But in the beginning, it was a feature that was, I think it was like, can't exactly remember what it was, but it was like something about like a spacing of some like the rows like of records or something like that, like in the UI. And it just kept like if there was a bug, like every time it was like a small thing. And it was my job to tell them, hey, this isn't working. But because it's so low priority, it doesn't get done till the end of the sprint. And so for about a whole quarter, I'm ping ponging this feature back and forth with this developer. And both of us by the end of the quarter were like, dude, this is so not worth our time. Like, what is going on? But because it was sort of the whole process of, yeah, he has other things, other priorities that are like actually like feature critical. He doesn't work on it till the end of the sprint. And I'm thinking, yeah, I have to test those other things that are future critical. So I'm not working on it till I have to. And then that ping pong kept happening like back and forth. And it was interesting because once we switched over to sort of a more like quality integrated mindset where from the beginning of the feature, like we're involved in the process of, hey, like this feature, does it, the way that this is being designed, does that make sense? Like as a user, am I going to be able to understand like how this works? We came across something very similar where it was like the spacing of like folders in like a taskbar or something. And we had very similar issues, very similar bugs, but because it was sort of like we were integrated in the beginning, it actually didn't even make it to the stage of like being a bug. It was just like, oh, hey, remember that one time we were ping ponging the feature like for a quarter? Hey, let's try to avoid that. Let's figure out right now what the issue is. And so for like maybe 3 days, we just worked on it together. And because of that, it actually just made it out fine. And we didn't even think about it after. So just that, like, we didn't know like how good it could be because the process of ping ponging the feature, like we have to follow the process. And so because of that, it created this like quarter long like inside joke between me and this dev. And then the higher ups didn't care about it. But like I also saw the flip side at the same company, like just because of a mindset, like a switch in mindset where quality is integrated from the beginning, we didn't even encounter an issue with it, right? And so I just thought that was like really funny because like it's not like anything, like the personnel didn't change, like the feature itself wasn't like more complex necessarily. It just took like maybe like seeing quality not as like the final checkoff for a feature to get out. It's more like, hey, from the beginning, let's think about this and spend the time. Yeah, it may take a little longer in the beginning, but the time we'll save like in the long run is massive, right? Because we just sort of I didn't really even think about that until like the quarter review, and I was like, huh, that was pretty cool. Like, I can't believe we did like that. Just like happened, and it was like a 3 day thing versus like a quarter long like struggle, you know? So
You didn't have to argue back and forth for 3 months
yeah,
straight
yeah,
about the little
yeah,
thing. That's crazy. The other thing that I think that, it develops, we kind of get this almost like a false sense of security, when you're like, well, the QA people signed off on it, so it's got to be perfect.
yeah,
QA people are fallible too, right? I mean, we all make mistakes, and it's like it just the setup is just kind of inherently wrong, because you're just kind of putting too much stock in the fact that QA people are infallible, and the bugs will never get through if we have dedicated QA people, because obviously we know that doesn't work. Not to say that QA people can't do their job. It's just so hard to do that.
yeah. No, and it definitely like relieves the pressure because as QA people, like when they're like, "Oh, QA people are infallible," we're like, no, we're not." Like, dude, and so like when something does get through, we feel like horrible. Like I've been there. Like it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. But yeah, when it's like this, it's not only relieves like that, like the sort of false sense of security, but it also like helps your QA people not feel so much like this is all riding on if I say yes or not, because that'll make you, that also, again, going back to team dynamics, makes the QA people very stressed. From experience, we're very stressed when
Oh,
it's
I'm
like that.
sure. I'm sure.
Yeah,
Well, and it kind of just takes all ownership off developers. They can just develop whatever crap
right,
code, and well, if a bug makes it through, that's not my fault. That's
right.
QA's fault. They're the ones that get in trouble for that, not me.
Yeah,
So yeah, I can see that too. That would be very stressful. Like, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective before. That's cool. Yeah.
yeah. Luckily, I haven't worked with developers that had that attitude. But yeah, like totally. If I'm having like a bad week, let's say, like, and I was a developer, like, well, I'm sure he'll understand, you know. But it's what if he's having a bad week at the same time? You know, it's just sort of one of those things.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned how, kind of baking quality in from the beginning. So that kind of dovetails into how we, Calibrity, when we put together a team, how we typically like to structure things. So the way I kind of explain it is, and we can kind of talk through it a little more, but like we have someone such as yourself, a test automation engineer, and we created that title to be different on purpose, right? So, no, they're not SDETs. No, they're not QA. No, we came up with a new title because we want to make sure that people understand that the role on the team is different. Instead of, hey, developers, test, write all your things and then go throw this stuff at Matt and he'll fix it and he'll make sure it's all good, right? Instead of that, the role would be for the test automation engineer is more of kind of that player coach mentality. So, as you mentioned, as we're starting to design a feature from the beginning, the test automation engineer is there with the team. We're all working together to design how we want to approach this problem. Look at the test automation. Can we even test this? If we take this route and we solve this problem this way, is this even something we can test? And then we get that insight from the beginning, rather than, oh yeah, it's now Friday at the end of the sprint, and there's no way to test this thing. Like that's it kind of saves some time.
Yeah,
So now that doesn't mean that they're not doing some of the testing. Absolutely they are, but more so they should be, if it's a new testing framework, or maybe some build automation to help a particular testing tool, they can help spin that up and set all those things up. But they're also coaching the team on how to be better testers, how to think about quality differently. And that's the approach we take. So tell us about your experience within those environments. And you already did a little bit, but are there other experiences you had there that you can tell us about?
yeah. I guess like with it, as with everything, like nothing's perfect, right? So like that's the ideal scenario, and I think like at the client, like they're definitely going through like transitions and like different changes. So part of it is like, I guess I think part of being player coach is understanding like the shortcomings and not being like overwhelmed by that or defeated by that. Because like to be honest, like, yeah, my role right now a lot is the traditional sense of QA. I think like helping the client sort of feel like, hey, I'm on your team, like I'm invested in this product, like I'm trying to make sure that we're pushing out something quality. But at the same time, yeah, I think there is uh, so being part of for example, planning meetings, refinement of stories, this is all like the points at which okay, I have to step in and ask, okay, there's multiple times when I'm asked what I have to ask, hey, can we test this, and to push back. And now again, being having to balance the client relationship is something a little bit that adds a little bit more of nuance in the discussion for sure. So I luckily have someone who's does automation and testing, leads QA at the client, that I can sort of talk to, back sort of the decisions that I make, ask him about. But I think a lot of it is hey, is this testable? What is the purpose of this test? And talking through okay, this feature, how can we make sure that everything that we're about to do, on the QA side, quality from even writing the story, how can we make it clear, this is what we're testing and why. And I think that's sort of where I've been recently, for sure. And I think that's sort of making the switch from hey, QA, I still do the whole sign off at the end, when the feature is done, because again, it's about where the client's at and helping transition into a more, hey, from the beginning, let's have confidence in the feature as it's being developed, as opposed to we don't have confidence until QA signs off on it. And so I'm doing a little bit of both right now, actually. But definitely in the past, it's definitely been really empowering as a QA, as a quality person, to be able to say hey, even to say things hey, I don't understand this. I don't understand how this feature works. Can you help me understand? And actually, because of those kinds of conversations, sort of helping the devs realize, oh, this wouldn't make sense if we're trying to onboard somebody. This is actually a good conversation to have. And so, yeah, I think that's sort of how I've experienced it. And so that's why at Calibrity, I thought it was really cool when initially I was interviewing, that this is the approach, that it's different. Because I think if more companies did this, or if this was more a common practice, I don't know if we'd feel so many pain points of hey, devs versus QA mentality kind of thing. Because from the beginning, we're all thinking about it all together. And so it also relieves a lot of that tension that we were talking about earlier of oh, I'm as a dev, oh, I finished, I'm finally done. And then you get a ping from a QA at 4 p.m. on Friday, hey, this is not working. And we've all been there, right? And
yeah,
so
call your friends at the
helps.
bar and tell them you won't be there for a little bit.
Exactly. And so I think that's what I think the mindset shift does help alleviate and sort of have, again, you'll have an idea, maybe it won't go well, right? The feature still won't go well, but at least, that Friday, your friends at the bar, you'll know on Tuesday or Wednesday as opposed to Friday on 4 p.m., right? So,
right. Yeah, I think it, and we get, when we speak to, clients or people that we're trying to have become our clients, we definitely get pushback on our kind of our approach, and they're like, it almost seems to them like we don't care about quality. But I think, nothing, obviously, you've been here for a while, nothing could be further from the truth. It's not that we don't care about quality, but we do it the way we do it because we care too much to let it become someone else's job, right? That's kind of the way we think about it, that quality isn't just a person, it's the team. Everybody is involved. Everybody owns quality. And to let people off the hook just because, because I'm a developer, we don't like to do that. So
yeah, no, I totally see that too. Because my team is a lot of Calibrity folks, and seeing they'll just casually throw out, oh yeah, I'm writing some tests. And I haven't really experienced that, I guess. It's always usually oh, hey Matt, can you write some tests for this? Let's talk about it. But actually the devs owning a lot of the quality, has been a really cool, nice change, I guess, for me in my career, seeing that. And yeah, quality for other people or some future person. I think one thing I was thinking about, it's also for your future self. That's another person that you have to think about.
Amen.
You're going to be debugging this later. You want to make sure that, hey, I at least put in the due diligence to think through this and at the time did the best I could to make sure that I'm communicating with my future self. Let's say it breaks down like, hey, this is where it broke. We had these tests to cover it. And, maybe you miss something. Inevitably, we're all human. We all miss stuff, right? But writing things in a way and building products and features in a way that, like, from the beginning, like, because we have the confidence that we wrote it with quality in mind, then that gives us like just peace of mind later. And like, I think, if I was to look back at work that I didn't feel confident that I, pushed out with quality, but just sort of got through like the bureaucratic, like sort of jumping through the hoops, right? I think there's a very different like sense of ownership mindset of like, oh, like, yeah, I don't really know what I did there. I don't know why I did that. We've all had that experience too. Like, I don't know why I wrote that way. Someone told me to do that, right? As opposed to, hey, we talked through this. We believe in this like product. We believe in how we approached it. And so it gives us like confidence in the future too. So
that's what it's all about, man. And what I came up with, I think we talk about it in our onboarding program. I think I coined this, but I called it like the golden ratio of testing. It's like confidence over drag, right? So anything that slows down your feedback loop, that's the drag. But the confidence, whenever you're testing something, it should be giving you more confidence that this thing's actually going to behave the way you want it to behave. And then that's what you want to maximize that numerator and minimize that denominator, so to speak, right?
Yeah. And I think the hard part is definitely like drawing that line, right? Like, and I think that is a big part of my job is to like make that call, like, hey, we have like beyond reasonable like certainty or confidence that like, hey, this product is quality, right? That it's not going to break, and as someone who is good at breaking things, I think like, just having a sense for that, but also like part of it is like communicating like, hey, this is what we're going for. This is why we're doing this. And I think that's what it comes down to a lot. Like for me, like my job, hey, this is like communicating why. Like here's where I draw the line and why. Because like you said, the drag might not be worth the small amount of confidence you gain in something. Right.
So. Absolutely. Yeah. So risk versus reward. Now, one of the things we hear, one of the objections, so to speak, is well, developers can't write tests. I guess the notion, the idea, which seems intuitive, is like it's kind of like grading your own homework, right? That's the idea. I guess that's intuitively that's how people think of it. But tell me about your experience there with that. Developers can't write tests, or they don't know how to do that. They don't think that way. They're not built that way. Tell me about your experience with that.
So my experience with that is like, well, that's completely untrue. Like it's just kind of like I've heard that for sure. And the way that like I would talk with the developers, I'm like, I totally think you could do what I'm doing right now. I can do it. Like I'll do it. It was always like I'll do it, but like I'm pretty sure you could have done this like in your sleep. But I think the worry, is like grading your own homework, like that kind of thing. Like you will have blind spots. And I think, again, that's why like doing things not like in isolation and like I'm the dev on this piece, like my piece, I do this and then I hand it off. But doing that like with other people like on your team, because they can see your blind spots, right? A lot better. And then again, that's part of my job is like with quality, I guess, like going back to that player coach mindset, like as someone who is sort of more focused on the quality aspect or the sort of, integrating it into the development process, I think I do see certain things. So like, again, it's sort of doing it together as a team with quality from the beginning is actually how like the actual execution of like, hey, I'm going to write code to test this product is not actually that like important, I guess, or like it's not difficult. Like it's not difficult for like someone to do. So I think like the more important part is like the mindset part and like thinking it through, talking about it with other people. And that's the whole thing about like the agile methodology, which is kind of, an interesting oxymoron in itself, but yeah. So,
oh man, we've had episodes about that for sure. Yeah, I love that it's about that mindset, and we can when we only talk about quality at the end, you don't get as much of a chance to reinforce that mindset. But when you do it throughout the entire process, and everybody's getting that reinforcement of quality, that quality mindset constantly, and iteratively throughout the entire process, yeah, absolutely, it gets people to develop better habits around quality. And I think just having the developers and the test automation engineers working closely together, it helps a little bit of a little bit of that empathy, right? To understand the other person's world. As you're coaching folks, you're saying, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And they might be like, oh, I had never thought of that when I'm writing my code. I just write it this way. I don't think of, things from that perspective. So it helps them to become better developers. And, you may learn some about the development process that you hadn't known about or something like that. And you're like, oh, I actually can, test that easier now, or whatever, however whatever lessons you learn. But we learn lessons from one another, right? We become more exposed to each other's world, and the quality just goes up from there.
Sure. Yeah. And I think like going back to like, it's like, I think processes are comfortable, and that's why people like why they're so prevalent, right? Like it's something that I can show up and do. But I think like when we sort of apply like that, it's a mindset and like working together, like my current team, like, man, the kind of like ways that like we're able to, like, I bring up an issue that I see, we work on it together, we work through the bug together. I'm not just like throwing a story back to them or like saying, hey, broken, fix it. But it's sort of, hey, let's hop on a call. This is what I'm seeing, and they dig into the code. And yeah, you're right. Like I learn a lot, and I've actually like applied a lot of what I've seen. For example, like, when there's like enums for example, and I just didn't know that, right? Like
Yeah.
set values that I can draw from. Well, I can pull that from my testing, right? As opposed to like having to hard code everything. And like, so I thought like that was pretty cool. And like that interaction, really love like my team. And I think like we have that right mindset of wanting to integrate quality from the beginning. And because like it's from the beginning, and so yeah, when the client feels like they want the process more than the mindset, it makes it, that causes a different kind of clash. And I think that's one thing that like we're working on. And I think we have like the opportunity to sort of help them to see like the benefit of the mindset versus the process. But again, it's not necessarily the client's fault. Like I was just thinking about that just now. Like, hey, they have their own like regulations and regulatory bodies that like are like looking at them, making sure they're following the processes. So it's a lot of things to juggle. But I think at the end of the day, like it will help like the client to have more quality outcomes if we're thinking about it from the beginning and taking a little more time to have that empathy that you were talking about, where the quality and the engineer, like the development folks, can be like basically just one, and like
Absolutely
doing it together. So
yep, a true team.
yeah.
I was wondering if you had I'll explain an aha moment for one of our clients. It was kind of interesting. We had one of our consultants was working for a client, and they I guess this person was just how they develop. They use TDD, test driven development, right? And the client was like, no, we don't do that here. Just we don't want you doing that. Like, stop doing that. We don't worry about. I don't know if they didn't worry about tests at all, or if they didn't do TDD. I don't remember, but I think it was we don't do tests at all. Just we don't want to pay you to write code and then also pay you to write tests. That's we're paying you to write code kind of thing, right? Well, this person, if that's the way you develop day in and day out, and that's just the way you work, it's hard to just stop. So he was like, I didn't know any other way, so I just kept developing the way I know how, which is TDD, and that's what he did. Well, a few months go by, and he kept doing his thing, and they at one point they were like, okay, hold on a second. What's going on here? This one fella's code, all of his stories, they go to production, and there's never quality issues coming back. And they were like, we need to dig into this and figure out what's going on here. What is this guy doing? And he had to kind of like fess up to, at the end, like, well, I've been, that TDD thing you told me not to do. I've been doing that. Oh, and they had like that light bulb moment. And then come to find out they had him like, hey, why don't you teach everybody else how to do that? So it was actually a good outcome at the end, but he kind of had to do it, on the down low, so to speak, and not let the client know he was doing that. Any aha moments like where, when the clients finally get it and anything like that?
Dang, that's pretty cool. Nothing as cool as that.
Yeah, it was
sure.
a cool story.
I think for all of my experience, it's always been in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
That the importance of doing a retro and thinking back, hey, this is what worked. And for us, for my team in particular, it's been a little tough, just because we've got just a interesting team dynamic with the client. But I think a lot of times it is being reflective, so having the time to think back on it. So it's always been iterative change that I've experienced, where it's
Sure.
hey, how did that that feature went really well? What happened? And a lot of times it was hey, we really dug in in the beginning, talked through it. I was there, able to give some input. And a lot of times when it didn't go well, the common denominator seemed to be we were just trying to get it out, and there are some higher ups that were hounding us about this, something like that. And so I think that's one thing. I haven't really seen that kind of aha from a client or from anyone I've worked with, but I think the first company I worked with, I talked about that switch that happened, and them really going all in on agile mindset. I think one thing was they sensed a need for change, and I think that's hard for people to feel because we get caught up in the day-to-day stuff. But they sensed, and kudos to them, big time. They sensed a change in the market. They sensed the changes that were happening in technology. And so they realized, hey, we need to do some catching up, we got to dig and see what's going on and is this sustainable? And so because they felt that need, I think they made some pretty drastic moves that not everybody was happy with. But for sure, you gotta there has to be a little bit of things aren't going well. I think a lot of times we settle for things not going well but are passable. And so I think the idea that this is as good as it can get, we need to let that go and look for how can this be better? And that's when I've seen okay, change happen. And that's been my experience. But again, it hasn't been anything as cool as I secretly just did TDD on my own. And, that's pretty awesome.
That's a fun story. We talk about that in our onboarding as well.
That sounds like it could be a Verge article,
It's a pretty cool story. It was a good relationship with that client too. I mean, they were like, "Oh, we need more of this." I'm like, "Sure, yeah, we get it." So I think we've kind of covered the topic and kind of all the angles, and so now we have to go into we're going to go into our new our other segment we call Ship It or Skip It. Actually, pause there for the jingle. We have a jingle for Ship It or Skip It. It's fantastic. It's not. I didn't sing it, so that's why it's fantastic. All right. So the idea here is. This is where we come up with a topic, and you and I will both weigh in. I'll let you go first so that I can, say you're full of it or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll let you go first, and we'll just bring up a topic and that can be seen as controversial, and you say, do that or don't do that. That's the ship it or skip it part. All right, number one. This is what I call it, YOLOing to prod. YOLO meaning you only live once, right? And people are that's just okay. Just release this stuff, right? And that's when you release things that have known low priority issues. Obviously, you're not going to release crazy stuff in a prod, but low priority issues. What do you think about that? Is that pragmatic delivery, or is that a slippery slope to laziness?
Wow, I feel as a quality guy, I gotta say skip. That would be kind of weird, but my gut says we should, if it's low quality stuff, right? Or I mean low priority stuff.
Yeah.
Ship it,
Okay.
and not now again, I would have to qualify that. how YOLO are we talking about? You know, like nobody's looked at it yet, right? But I'm assuming like these people aren't crazy. I'm assuming that, right? So I'm assuming that we've done what we can and it's just like a stubborn bug or something like that. And it's sort of very low priority. I'm going to say ship it because the idea that like you can't ship anything unless it's perfect seems like that's going to create that drag, you know, that we talked about. So,
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you on that one. I'm okay with being a little, move fast and break things kind of a mentality. I'm okay with that. And I've tried to stress to my clients in the past, like what you want to make sure you can do is bring down that mean time to remediation, like make it very easy to go fix when something makes its way into production that's, suboptimal or however you want to say it, a bug, because they're going to make it anyway. So, but making your processes, your build, your all of the things quick, easy, simple, rock solid deployment, deployment back into production, make that perfect, make that just shine so that when those things do make their way to production, you can fix them quickly. The other part of it that we software engineers struggle with is especially ones who are obsessed with quality, or we emphasize quality so much, is like the idea of like the kind of the startup mindset, right? I don't know if you've worked for a startup, but like in a startup world, you kind of have to get your product out in front of people and start to, the priority is to start bringing revenue in, get some money going, so sometimes it is okay to, maybe you're going to rewrite it when you get your next round of funding. There's the big rewrite that's going to happen. You're proving out a concept that people will buy this product. Who cares if the code is perfect? Like, so that's been hard for me in an environment where it's like that, to be like, just okay, yeah, well, let's let it go to product. Okay, I'm fine. Like, I want to like polish the code and make it beautiful, right? But in that environment, that's not the best business thing to do. So that's a tough situation, and in those situations, absolutely, YOLOing with those low quality issues, or sorry, low priority issues is fine.
yeah.
Okay, next, how about bug bounties? Is that and this is new. We didn't do this before with ship it or skip it, but I'm going to characterize it, and you can come up with your own characterization. But I like the ones that I came up with, so I'm going to say them. Are bug bounties crowdsourced brilliance or outsourced due diligence?
That is tough. And I feel like that's outsourced brilliance, crowdsourced brilliance, because the reality is like you don't know what you don't know. And I think like having like outside perspective is what you sometimes what you need. And hey, like who knows, like if there's like something that like someone comes up with and you just like it blows your mind, you know, like hey, like maybe that's someone you need to pick up. You know?
It's a
Like
recruiting
maybe
tool.
that's exactly. And I think that's something that could be good. Now, of course, you can't go crazy with that. Again, like anything taken to an extreme is like
Sure.
obviously bad. But yeah, I feel like that's outsourced brilliance, but maybe that's my Gen Z showing. I don't know.
That's okay. No, my Gen X would agree with you. Yeah, I think bug bounties. The interesting thing is it's almost like a psychology thing for me, right? It's if you release things out in front of your users and they do find bugs, they're going to be upset, right? Usually they're going to be upset, but if they can be involved, with you have those bug bounties, it's almost like they're part of the team, right? So they feel a level of ownership with the product. I think that's kind of cool to bring your users in together as almost like part of the product team themselves, and that helps them, develop a sense of ownership over the product. So I kind of like it, right? Now, again, like you said, I'm not saying like, okay, let's just go. Nobody write tests, no test automation engineers, just YOLO everything straight to prod every
Our
time,
users
and
are our test.
they'll figure it out, and we'll give them a couple bucks here and there when they do. No, I'm not saying that, but I do think it's an interesting dynamic that you're almost like bringing them into the fold, and they can be part of the team with by helping you find bugs instead of finding it and just being mad. They're finding it mad, but then less mad when they get a few bucks for it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the one where maybe we will not Agree. And I don't know if it's a Gen Z, Gen X thing, or if it's just me. I'm the problem. I'm okay with that if I'm the problem. 100% test coverage. This one always gets is an interesting topic. Is that the gold standard, or is that a false idol?
Um, yeah, when I hear that, I think immediately false idol, like because to be 100% anything like creates that kind of sense of false security that we talked about earlier. But
Mm-hmm.
I think also yeah, man, like I feel so because feel like I have to qualify, right? It's the 100% 10% test coverage is something we should strive for. So like in that way, it's a standard, like a gold standard, but it's not something that like necessarily is like that shouldn't be our like main focus, I guess. It's going back to sort of the YOLOing the prod thing that we were talking about, like the whole like, hey, this is going to go out. It doesn't like we need to focus on getting test coverage. Sometimes what is required is, hey, we don't have 100% test coverage. We need to get this thing done. Let's not focus on the coverage right now. In this like stage of life of the product, we need to focus not so much on that. So yeah, I just feel like it depends. So for me, I lean more towards false idol, I guess.
All right. I'm going to go gold standard, but not for the reason that most people think is that it's not just the 100% isn't for me, the outcome I'm looking for. It's a means to an end for me. So in my experience, when I'm working on a code base that's capable of getting to 100% test coverage, it's usually designed well. And when you're designed to be testable, it's modular. You're using dependency injection. Like the code is easier. If it's easy to test, it's typically just a well written code base. That's been my experience. So when I push for 100% test coverage, it's usually more of a challenge to say, instead of just saying, oh, we're close enough, we're at 95% or we're at 80%, like we're close enough. Well, challenge yourself. Can you find a piece of code that's like, I'm really having a hard time testing that? Use it like a puzzle. How can I get this thing to be testable? And then usually when you do refactor, it becomes a little more modular, a little more well written. So that's the reason I like it. Now I will again qualify that when it comes to things that don't need to be tested. Like in the Java world, we have always the example is like getters and setters. Of course not. Just ignore that stuff. For me, I use code generation tools, so those things aren't even really code until compile time anyway. So if you don't see it, you don't have to test it, kind of thing. So yeah, ignore the things, the trivial bits of code. And the things that really do, like if there's two sides to an if branch, maybe you should test both of them, right? That kind of stuff is kind of important, right? Like,
Yeah.
I just, call me a stickler, but I do think yes, it's important in and of itself, but I also think it's a means to an end for higher quality code.
Yeah.
That's where I
And
land
I
on it.
think like what we said is we're hitting the same thing from different sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's again like going back to the how do you think about your code? And like is it something that you want to like be quality and but at the same time like balancing that with pragmaticism. And so yeah.
Yes, indeed. All right. We have our last segment, the lightning round, that we have not done yet. And this is the most important segment of the show. This is the most, you want to talk about stress. This is high stress, high stakes. There are absolutely right answers to these questions. And I'm going to be just firing them at you. I'm not going to let you think. You just need to
Got it.
answer.
Got
Right.
it.
So this is an extremely stressful thing. Okay. What was your favorite childhood TV show?
I didn't watch TV growing up actually. Didn't. So I read books.
I like that answer. I knew I
Yeah.
like this guy. I'm a book guy myself, but I did watch TV because I grew up in the 80s, and like you have absentee parents in the 80s.
Fair.
We were feral in the 80s. So yeah, TV was a way to babysit us back then. Anyway, I like that answer. Why can't we tickle ourselves? Ooh, coming from someone who studied cognitive science. Why can't we tickle ourselves?
Okay, so I actually thought about this a lot as a kid because I didn't watch TV. But so my
Dang it.
theory about this is that because in order, like, tickling is about, like, do I trust this person or not? A lot of it is like, hey, you're in my personal space. Hey,
Right.
what are you doing? Stop that. Right. And so we can't tickle ourselves because we inherently just trust ourselves and we know where our body parts are. And so we, like, our brain is already thinking about, oh, I'm moving my hand up to my neck. Nothing's going to happen because it's my hand. That's my theory.
So that's what all you kids were thinking about, the book readers, while I was watching He-Man and Transformers
Yeah,
and ruining my brain.
I picked up the most random things because of boredom. Boredom
I
is a
like
great development of, like, random useless talents.
I like that. Okay. What is the fastest speed you've ever driven in a car?
Oh, God. I've actually never gone triple digits.
Never.
So never. I got very close and I'll leave it there. I'm sure that's slower than a lot of
Whatever
people.
you say cannot be used against you in a court of law. I don't know that that's true.
I don't even know
Don't take.
because,
I'm
like,
not a lawyer, so
yeah,
don't take that
I
too
don't
true.
even know because the speedometer was like, it's the dial one. So I don't know the exact number, but might have started with a 9.
Yeah, you never know. Those things can be off too. Who calibrated this thing?
Exactly.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
Didn't feel like 100. It felt like 47, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Name a word that starts with the letter Q.
Quilt.
Quilt. Okay. What type of milk do you put in your cereal? You're a 2% guy, whole milk, skim?
Whole
What are you
milk.
doing? Whole
I'm a
milk.
whole milk guy. Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yep.
That's a good answer. Why do it halfway, right?
Exactly.
Would you go to a movie alone?
No,
No.
I wouldn't. My friends have, though, and we made fun of them for a long time over that.
I have gone to a movie alone. Not only was I alone with, like, one of my friends at the movie, I was alone with no one in the movie.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty cool. I was like taking selfies in the middle of the movie.
I feel like that's different, though. Like, if you're alone and it's completely empty, that's a selfie moment. Like,
Yeah.
hey, look at this, right?
It was fun.
But if you're alone and there's, like, couples, families, and then you're the one guy there, I feel like I just can't do that personally.
I did it when I traveled for work.
Okay.
What else are you going to do?
Yeah, that's fair.
But no, like, it's not like on a weekend I'm not going out, by myself to go into, yeah. No. Okay. Black beans or refried beans in your burrito?
I just say black beans because I don't really know the difference, I guess. Didn't really grow up eating a lot of beans except in my burrito, like Chipotle burritos. So, yeah. I think it's like less calories or something. I forgot why. But then ever since I decided to eat black beans, I just always say black beans at Chipotle. So
it doesn't feel like this is one of those things you were sitting thinking about when you weren't watching
definitely
TV.
not. Yeah, definitely not. I was too busy figuring out how to get this spit bubble to fly off my tongue.
That is a talent.
Very rare talent, actually.
Or what's the thing they called it when you, like, the saliva gland gleeking? Yeah.
I can do that.
You had to learn that too. That's important.
Yeah.
Okay. LA or New York?
Oh, God. I hate both of them personally. LA, I guess, because my family lives there, like my extended family. So
okay.
Yeah, and then
where would your favorite place to be?
I really love Chicago, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I've lived in California, like SF. Been to LA like every year for Christmas. Went to New York for a graduation trip. Chicago, lived there for 3 years. Love it. I think it's the best city in the States. Yeah.
I was just there yesterday. I really like Chicago. I wish I could have spent more time. I was only there for a night, but I do like Chicago. It's a great city.
Yeah.
How would you rate yourself and your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to Mariah Carey?
Gosh, I don't know. I can sing. Like, I know I can sing.
Okay.
So maybe like from 1 to Mariah Carey, maybe like early 2000s YouTuber trying to make it big kind of thing. Like I'm right around maybe a little worse than them.
Okay. Like
Yeah.
that's like sounds like a Justin Bieber situation.
No, no, not Justin Bieber. I'm talking about like the ones that didn't make it.
Okay. Yeah. They didn't
Yeah,
get picked up. Okay. I
yeah,
got you.
yeah.
All right. That's fine. Uh, what temperature do you like your thermostat set at?
68.
68.
I'm a 68 kind of guy.
Is
Yeah,
that for heat or is that for cool or both?
both.
Just I want it at
Consistent all
68,
year round.
period.
Yep,
All
yep.
right.
But thing about that, so I grew up in Davis, California, which is uh, it'll be like consistently like 115, 110 in the summers, like for like weeks at a time.
Okay.
And then you have like a cool day for soccer practice in the fall is like 90, 92, something like that. Um, but I would set the thermostat to as low as it could go. And my dad would get so mad at me. And I was like a conscientious kid, so I didn't like it when my parents were mad at me. But it was just I couldn't stand it. Like I just had to turn it all the way down, and then every day he would come home and be like, and then like who turned the thermostat up? Yeah.
So now that you're grown and out of your parents' house, you're like, nope, I'm setting it at 68.
Yeah. Now that I'm paying for it, I
Yeah.
think that's
Well,
the
and
main
that's
thing.
what I was going to say. Like my hope as a parent, because I have kids in the house, and like they do that. I get mad when people, I'm very particular about that thermostat. That's money, right? But my hope is, and you think like, oh yeah, you'll learn one day when you move out of my house and you have to pay your own bills. You're not going to be doing 68, but actually, that's not true. You do
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm paying it. I'm gonna go with 68. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
whatever. I have no idea what number we're on, but we're gonna keep going because we're covering some really important topics. I like this one. If Tupac, you know who Tupac is, Shakur, if he appeared before you right now, what's the first thing you would ask him?
Who was it?
Hmm, I
That's
like
it.
that. It's probably that's the obvious
Yeah.
question, I guess.
Yeah. But I guess if I had a second question, be like, you want to go to lunch? What do you want to eat? Let's go eat.
Why don't we take my car?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because
Please.
they might know yours. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, so we're gonna say that was question 7 or 8. All right, what is the lamest dessert that people try to pass off as a dessert?
Oh man, lamest dessert. I love dessert, so this is tough. I pretty much love all food, so this is very tough. I think flan.
Mm,
Have you had flan?
I have
I
had
like
flan.
flan a lot, but it's like a milky. It's like custard, like a jello-y, like a firm custard is sort of the experience, I guess. Um, yeah, it's very underwhelming, I guess, when people are
Hmm.
like, "Oh, this is really good," and it was just all right. I guess related to that would be Jello.
Mm.
Yeah,
Jello is kind of lame.
yeah, but
There's
it
always
is.
room for it, but it's lame.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. At the buffets, it's always for some reason I always scoop some. So
I had a good friend growing up, George. His mother was from Cuba, and she made a flan that like I since then I've never had a flan again in my life that was like I enjoyed as much as that. It was fantastic. Like she should open a flan business because it was fantastic. But yeah, you're right. If it's not the right texture, yeah, I'm with you.
right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But on the other side, very underrated desserts. Many of them, but very underrated to me. Is cheesecake. I know people love cheesecake, but man, I love cheesecake. I could eat cheesecake every day, and it
Like an
goes best with
unhealthy, like
yeah, New
like.
York style cheesecake. Yeah, it was one of those things I learned to bake in college as I was procrastinating for finals.
Wow, I could go do organic chem or make a
Bake a
cheesecake. Yeah.
cheesecake. Yeah.
All right. All right. This is going to be our final question. I got to find a good one here. Uh, wow, that one's probably. Do you like the smell of gasoline?
I do actually. Kind of weird though. It's kind of like not as like as a kid I loved it. like, Mom, please roll down the windows. I want to smell that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, something about it. It's like same like vein as like Sharpie, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So something about it. It doesn't smell good. I just enjoy it. I don't know. It's hard to explain why. Yeah.
I'm the same way, but it was definitely worse when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, like I definitely liked it more as a kid than I do as an adult, but I don't
Oh, okay.
dislike it as an adult. I'm the same way
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts or that you would share with the audience? Anything like that? Words of wisdom? Anything like that?
Like related to this or
Or like not smelling gasoline, probably,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I guess like related to like quality, like, the whole like idea of like being anti-fragile. It's like, when bad stuff come or stressors or shocks or whatever, that stuff comes, like that's when an anti-fragile system becomes stronger. It's not just like they grit their teeth and make it through. It's actually the stressors make the system or whatever it is stronger. I think striving to be that means that like you have to be like not just resilient to change, but like learning to embrace change or embrace things that may be difficult, and figuring out how is this good for me?
Hmm.
And I think that's one thing that like it's not necessarily like something you can do alone. I think a lot of people try to do a lot of things alone, and this is not just for like work. It's just life, I guess. Like my experience, and I'm young, so like this kind of sounds quaint coming from like a younger guy, but I think like one thing that I've definitely learned over the years, is that life is not meant to be done alone. I think in my experience of life, I guess very little experience of life, but life is just better. It's more fun, more doable, less anxious when we have a lot of people around us, and not just like any people, because of course there's toxic people and like whatever. But I think doing life with other people, like help like having that be like towards a same goal or doing something meaningful together. I think that's something that I've really experienced to be true. And I think that's something that applies to like this whole conversation of quality. Like when
Hmm.
we're trying to make like something like a quality product, we're on the same team, um, and we act like it, like we're on the same team, we're doing this all together. Things that happen that are like kind of like less than ideal or bad, like it's just a new challenge and it'll make the team stronger and work better together, and it'll show up in the product as well. So that's sort of how I see it and how I'm trying to live my life. But of course, I have a lot of life left to live, so it's kind of quaint again. But that's sort of, I guess, my closing thought.
Well, my takeaway is I need to read more books and stop watching TV because that was deep. I liked it. It was deep.
Not my choice. I was talking to my parents about that.
That's good parents right there. I wish I had done
Yes,
that with my
yes, sir.
kids.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. And that's it for this episode of the Forward Slash Podcast, where bold ideas shape what's next in IT. Subscribe, share, and stay curious. We'll catch you next time.